For all you boppers out there in the big city, all you street people with an ear for the action, I've been asked to relay a request from...
Well, hello there, and welcome to Straights and Curves. We draw things, we talk about some things. You can draw some things too, because today we're talking about Lois Lane. When we first meet Lois, we see that she is a tenacious reporter, willing to go to strange and dangerous places to get the most interesting stories possible. She is driven, ambitious, and guarded. As a result of this, we really don't get an idea of her personal depths or values at first appearance, because up until she meets Clark for the second time at Jonathan Kidd's grave at Smallville Cemetery, she has been all about the story, the job as it were. It's when Clark tells Lois his story, when Lois is confronted with Clark's humanity, that we finally see what's beyond the exterior of Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter Lois Lane. We see something a little deeper. After Lois decides not to continue the follow-up story to her experience on the Kryptonian scout ship, this is when her character changes, and we start to see her empathy and compassion. This shows that even though she loves her work, accolades, and the thrill of chasing a story, she will not pursue it at the cost of others' suffering, pain. She is not a malicious person or reporter. The press in the United States is often viewed as the fourth branch of the government because of its control and influence on public perception and opinion. Lois, Perry, the Daily Planet, and sensationalist reporters like Woodburn all symbolically represent the media's many different methods and reporting tactics. Lois in this context is more representative of the integrity the press can have when they try. After dropping the story, and after Zod's broadcast message to Earth about turning Clark in, Lois finds herself defending Clark with the same tenacity that she pursued her story in the beginning with. Even more so if you consider that the fate of the Earth was at stake, she ends up working together with people, the military, the scientists, who at the start of the film she was more closed off from in her interactions. This goes for them as well, as this is in part a byproduct of their interactions with Clark and his earnest nature, which help remind them of their own humanity and empathy. By the end of the film, when she welcomes Clark to the planet, the Daily Planet, we have a clear picture of who Lois is. She's not just some hard-headed one-note character or plot armor. Lois is a driven reporter with a lot of heart and empathy. It's almost like that's her secret power. And that's something really, I think, to keep in mind in this retelling, as Man of Steel's reintroducing the world to Superman and his lore in a more earnest and serious fashion. Something that with a little stronger emotional resonance for a modern audience, certainly, but it has like a timeless earnestness, connective ideas. And so Lois, I think, she is in a lot of ways, she can be seen many different ways, but I think these particular deeper elements of who she is kind of overlooked from her more snappy, witty dialogue. Certainly she's witty, but I think her compassion and empathy, these are really interesting things, because you don't see them typically outside of her time with Clark. No, I'm going to touch on that a little bit later, but that's something to keep in mind with Lois Lane, because if she didn't have these depths, she wouldn't have nuance. She would be a very boring character, and she would fall into the trap that can fall into when they attempt to write what they feel is a strong, credible female character. They inadvertently write them as very uninteresting, and they really rob the character of personality and nuance, which is necessary to amplify their more surface traits of, you know, their tenacity or their determination. And so having this template, this example of who Lois is in Man of Steel, we move into chapter 2 of the Superman epic, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. And it starts off, the time frame is 2 years after, essentially, Man of Steel. So here, it's like Lois like 2 years later. Here we find Lois again resumes her role as the better part of the media, which is important as the media plays a big character in this film. But on a deeper level, I feel that Lois' arc was the same lesson that Lester Freeman from The Wire told Jimmy McNulty, that the job will not save you. It's a lesson I think is shared across the board for a few characters like Clark, Bruce, and Diana. It's the idea that if you bury your head into your work, you don't have to feel the feeling you don't want to feel. Kind of like drinking alcohol to depress your pain or anxiety or fear. And after the massacre in Nairobi and seeing all those dead bodies, finding the bullet in her notebook, and seeing Jimmy shot in the face, Lois is shook, as she should be. That's a heavy duty experience to go through and witness. So she tries to block out the trauma by diving headfirst into searching the origins of the mystery bullet stuck in her notebook. But in doing so, she doles out feeling the human cost that can come with doing what she does. And since part of Lois's drive is the search for the truth, by trying to use her work to avoid the truth of her situation, she in effect is in violation of her own code, so to speak. You know, there is a cost, there is a price to pay for going into these dangerous places in search of the next big story. Like she told Clark when he came back to the apartment with the flowers in the beginning of the movie. You know, she appreciates what he did for her in saving her, but there's a cost. There's a cause and effect. These things don't happen in a vacuum. You know, it's like when you go and search for a story and you bring people along, things happen also in effect. The CIA wanted to join in and use her story as a means to go after the general. And as a result, on top of that, the general who had that, but who on top of that operation the CIA had, Lex Luthor, peeped that because Lex Luthor has many eyes around the world, as a man with his power and influence has. And with the plot he had to turn the world against Superman, he used that as well. So these are part of the cost. She did not intentionally intend for this to happen, but there's a cost for her being involved with Superman. And in this case, part of it is being used unknowingly by Lex Luthor to cause harm, which hurts other people in the process. It's a tricky thing. It's like it's something that will really it could shake anybody's confidence, really. So that price, that cost, is a price General Swanwick reminds her of when she tries to pressure information out of him in their encounter in the men's bathroom. Ballsy, I know. So Manhunter, or rather Swanwick, reminds her that in her pursuit of the interview with General Amjad, people, regardless of him saving Lois, and the village too from the drone missile, people still died, and now Superman looks real sus because it looks like they were burned by the same kind of laser fire that may have been from a being like him. He's not sure if Superman is guilty, and Lois' approach totally turned him off to talking to her. So, feeling shook, Lois steps back, recalibrates herself, and meets with Swanwick again. But this time, she comes correct, a lot more humble in light of the heavy nature of what Superman's being accused of. In this particular scene, which is what this image, which I'm drawing here, what this is based off of. This is a scene that gets glossed over so much, it's a little painful because there's two major scenes of great importance to Lois and her character. One of which is the scene with her stopping Bruce from killing Clark and himself in all reality, and this scene with her meeting with General Swanwick in the dark rain and under the arch of an old building. You know, in film and story, weather is a big indicator of mood and emotion of a scene. The scene is no exception. As Lois is waiting for Swanwick to arrive, she once again plead her case and request to them. Keep in mind, outside of when she's with Clark, Lois really does not let people in. We don't see her do that. Like, watch these two movies again, you'll see it. She's very particular. She's very, and again, that's kind of like mentioned before, the nature of the field she's in, the difference between business and personal. If you've ever been on a job, any kind of job, from Target to Wall Street or whatever, it's usually small talk. It's nothing really too deep. When people say, how are you doing? Typically what they really mean is hello or good morning. Because when they say, how are you doing? They don't really mean it. Not really. That's why you hear people complain about, why are people telling me their life story when I ask how they're doing? They're really it's people trying to connect. But since, as a result, there's a habit of insulation that people like to do, and there's different reasons for it. Some people, they haven't resolved their own personal pain, so it's very hard for them to hear about others' pain, because when empathy is at play, when you have actually healthy functioning empathy, you do feel you emotionally resonate with another's story. Even if it's not the exact note for note exact situation, the core emotion is still shared, which reminds you of your own emotion, and that can be hard for people. And then some people are they don't care. They're very apathetic. They're very, they're more antisocial, or, things of that nature. So when she's at the Daily Planet or out on assignment, you get Pulitzer Prize reporter Lois Lane. If you meet her on the job or on the clock, that's who you're getting. Which is certainly part of who she is, but is not the core of who she is, which is why it's such a big deal when she tells General Swanwick that the deaths in Nairobi do bother her. Lois doesn't tell people that anything is bothering her, much less what is bothering her. That is huge, and it gets glossed over way too much. This is some of her biggest character moments. As fun, as cool as it is, her saying, quipping, snapping back and forth and being witty, that really doesn't tell you that's on the job. It's these things right here that really get you a look into who she is as a person, as someone that, if you were to meet her on the street, would she be someone you'd want to meet? Or conversely, would she be open to meeting someone like us? You know what I mean? That kind of thing. It's it's a big deal. She lets her guard down just enough. She doesn't move the veil completely away, but it's just enough to let Swanwick know she's being sincere, and not just in her efforts to clear Clark's name, but also her efforts to get to the truth of happened in Nairobi, because it's a big problem. I mean, look at her face, look at her voice. Besides Clark, we don't see Lois showing anyone how messed up she really is from that whole incident. This is a woman who actually cares about what happens around her. She's not some glory hound too obsessed with her social status that she can't or won't care about the heavy cost that can come with chasing the truth of the world. Lois is at a place where she is struggling with reconciling her role as Press and Clark's lover in the middle of this awful situation in a way she hasn't encountered before. After meeting Swanwick, giving him the bullet to investigate, Lois's continued search finds her almost as an outside observer to the media that she is a part of, unable to drown out the hyperbole of talking heads, because she's still sorting out the necessary evidence of the truth of what happened in Nairobi in connection with Lex Luthor, and now with the Capitol bombing, again seemingly implicating Superman as committing the act or being a co-conspirator. Now the second scene, as mentioned before, that's important to Lois's character is the end of the fight. It's the fight with Batman and Superman. AKA, Bruce is wilding out and clearly hasn't played Sonic and Knuckles because he's Knuckles in this situation. At the end of the fight between Batman and Superman is a lot of times erroneously attributed to Bruce hearing Clark tell him to save Martha. This is false. It's Lois pleading for Clark's life that stopped Bruce. Specifically, before she arrived, Clark asked Bruce to save Martha. Clark asking Bruce to save Martha only enraged Bruce, triggering his PTSD, and was just about to stab Clark in the face because Bruce is so terrified of what he thinks Clark might do, despite all of his actions saying that he is an ally to Earth. Lois has to literally throw herself in front of Clark, in front of the spear created from hate to kill Superman, and scream and plead with Bruce that Martha is Clark's mother, his Earth mother, not Space Mom Laura L., who earlier Bruce spitefully remarked about because he was being a salty coward, but the woman who helped raise him on Earth. Now, question, would Lois at the start of Man of Steel risk being killed by Batman to save an alien from space? Think about that. You can answer inside, but think about that. When you first see her, before she meets Clark, when she's getting off that helicopter, and you first meet her, would that Lois Lane do this in Batman v Superman? It's something really interesting to think about. Maybe. The controversial maybe. She's changed a lot since that first time we saw her. If in Man of Steel, Clark was the answer to "Are we alone in the universe?" then in Batman v Superman, he could be seen as the question of what does an alien from space raised on Earth mean to humanity? With Lois, in this case, being the answer. He is one of us. This is his world. That is the truth of Batman v Superman. Man of Steel. Lois Lane is the defender, rather the advocate of truth, risking her life for the truth because it's so important to humanity. Her arc across these two films can be described as connecting deeper with her humanity, her empathy, and the world through the kindness of a stranger from a different world but raised on her. At the end of Batman v Superman, Lois is, much like the rest of the world, mournful after Clark's death at the hands of Luthor via the desecration without name. What will be next for Lois? In Zack Snyder's Justice League, Chapter 3 of 5 of the 5-part Superman epic, how her character change and grow. I don't know, but I can't wait to see it. When it hits HBO Max in 21, cheap plug, not sponsored. 4 hours of earnest, sincere, Baroque comic book goodness. So, what are your thoughts about Lois? What do you think about it? These are just random thoughts. These are just, ruminations and thoughts about, what I've observed and what I don't really see people talking about when they refer to Lois. She's kind of, people just kind of see her as they kind of they tend to recycle around, I'm not a lady, I'm a journalist. And that's kind of it. Which, it's a cool line. We like seeing confidence. That's cool. But that's here. So, till next time, later days.
You're looking good, warriors. All the way back to Coney. You hear me, babies? Good. Real good. Adios.